Good morning, Indiana. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the only unapologetically progressive news and talk show in the Hoosier state. I am Scott Aaron Rogers, broadcasting from Bloomington this morning. I got a couple friends here with me on standby to talk about this week's news from across Indiana and beyond. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Do be sure to like and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hit that bell icon so you get notifications whenever we post new content. If you're on Facebook Live, hey, you following us over there. I would appreciate a subscription over at HoosLeft.us, especially a paid subscription helps keep this project going. And if you can't commit to an ongoing subscription, hey, check out that QR code up in the corner of the screen there. You can follow that and make a one-time contribution over on Venmo. Again, would deeply appreciate any support you can give us. Follow on social media. My handle is at Who's Left on most of the sites, on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads. It is at HoosLeft.us. So let us go ahead and welcome in our guests this morning. First, back from last week, she can't get enough. It's Tabitha Ziegler.
Hi, guys.
Welcome. Good to have you here. Nice to see you again. And also, back to the show. It's been about a month. Let's bring him back in here. There is our good friend, Simon Higgs. Welcome, Simon.
Hey, Scott.
How you folks doing today? You having a lovely Sunday morning? Nice where you're at?
Yeah, well, like you asked me or all of us if anybody could jump on, and you're my friend, so I make it happen. So here I am in my lovely car and doing the guerrilla podcaster thing.
I love it, and good to have you. I'm glad you and I met and that we get a chance to do this together. You are a lot of fun to hang out with, and listen, it takes a lot for someone to make for someone to make me blush. I have a mouth of a sailor, and Tabitha, not only do you give me a run for my money, you run circles around me. So let us go ahead and jump into this week's news with a little segment I like to call Around the Corn, where we look at our briefs from around the state of Indiana. And we are going to begin the week in Crown Point, where last Sunday, a 38-year-old Chicago woman was forcibly removed from Franciscan Health Hospital despite being in active labor. Mercedes Wells, with the help of her husband Leon, delivered a healthy baby girl 8 minutes later in their car on the side of the road. As of Friday, now Franciscan Health Crown Point CEO Raymond Grady says the attending doctor and nurse have been terminated and cultural competency training has been mandated for all labor and delivery staff. This incident marked the second time in less than a week that a Black woman had been turned away from a U.S. hospital despite being minutes away from giving birth. Moving on to another indignity, the family of Indiana National Guardsman Terry Fry is accusing U.S. Senator Jim Banks of using the untimely death of the 23-year-old as a political prop. Fry was killed in a multi-vehicle collision on I-65 near Whitestown on November 14th when his Humvee was involved in an incident with a car carrier truck driven by Goderdzi Ujabidze, a native of the Republic of Georgia. Now, the truck driver is being held by ICE, though they have not provided information on the man's immigration status. Banks, of course, ran directly to social media, posting, quote, Indiana National Guardsman Terry Fry should still be alive. His life was cut short on I-65 by an illegal who never should have been here in the first place, end quote. Again, we don't know that. Meanwhile, Fry's family responded in a statement to WTHR Channel 13 Indianapolis, quote, we do not appreciate this tragedy being weaponized. Please let our family grieve without being pulled into politics. And another untimely death we covered in this space recently was the shooting of Maria Florinda Rios Perez. Recall, the cleaning lady was shot through the locked front door of a Whiteland home when she showed up to work at the wrong address. This week, the homeowner, Kurt Anderson, was arrested and charged with one count of voluntary manslaughter After an initial hearing in Boone County Court Friday, Anderson, 62, is free after posting the $25,000 bond. Now, got some more briefs, but before we carry on, I want to pause and take stock of where we're at. If either of you would like to comment on one of those stories, and Tabitha, I will start with you.
Well, I've got a few aunts and several other family members that are part of the nursing field. And I know in my family, I think the reason they joined was to help people. And, besides just going against the medical oath that you take to protect people and to do no harm, I just feel like the other nurses, I mean, right now, people are coming after NPs and things of that nature, saying that these are not professions anymore, and they shouldn't even be allowed to have that category or that funding. So now these nurses, who there are a lot of them, not just in my family, should be pissed, because these few bad actors, these few bad characters are really making a bad name for the nurses, when all of us know, the nurses are the ones that hold up the hospitals. So they should basically be like publicly slamming these people. And it's not good enough that they just fired just those two people, because I'm sure it wasn't just two people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes a lot of work, really, and a lot of purposeful head turning to look the other way from a basically fully dilated pregnant woman giving birth, irregardless of what color that person is, to turn your back on someone in that state and have other people that would be, in the ER and all of that would have seen this. The public outcry should just be outrageous at this point.
Absolutely should. Simon, can I ask you about the manslaughter charge in the Whiteland shooting? Is that sufficient? Oh, you're muted, sir. I cannot hear you now. Womp womp. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. We're gonna let Simon go ahead and figure that out, and I will comment, and I will say, manslaughter is not a sufficient charge for that case. I do believe you have a duty to make sure what you're doing before you go discharging a gun. Simon, you're back. What do you think?
Okay.
Hey, there he is.
Yeah. Sorry, technical problems, which we'll have to talk about after the show. So, from the perspective of the circumstances, the police and the prosecutor are doing the correct thing. If you shoot somebody, the expectation is you're going to get arrested. You're going to have your gun at least temporarily confiscated. And then the prosecutor is likely to charge you at some level. Whether these charges stick is a whole nother thing. Indiana has the what do they call it?
Stand your ground, or the castle doctrine. Yes,
which technically protect somebody from defending their home. So, but as far as the law goes, if somebody is breaking into your house, coming into and actually inside the home, then you have a right to defend the home. But if somebody's standing on the doorstep, you don't necessarily have that right unless they're clearly trying to breach the doorway. And those are sort of established principles. There's a couple of organizations out there that actually do free training on stand your ground law. And I don't know if this is an appropriate point to give them any publicity, but you can find them on Facebook and other places. But I did a couple of seminars with one group, and they were like, is it right to shoot? and they go through the law in quite detail to the point where you go, oh crap, that's what the law actually says. This is going to be slightly off topic, but Indiana law allows you to stop, and this is a separate line item, allows you to defend a fetus being murdered. There's no context to the law, but the law actually, as it's written today, would allow somebody to go in and shoot a doctor trying to save a mother, or any kind of
oh wow.
Yeah. And there's no context to it. So whereas it's like, okay, if you're in a head-on car collision and you're a drunk driver, you kill a pregnant woman, then you're liable for the woman and the baby she's carrying. That's sort of self-explanatory. But an ectopic pregnancy or something like that, where the mother's life is in danger, for any complications from a pregnancy, the law still allows you to stop the doctor from doing that. So this homeowner is sort of right now, I think, in a grey area, because they've been rightfully arrested and charged, and it says the lady was shot through a locked front door. So clearly she wasn't trying to breach the door. She was basically, knocking on the doors. And this isn't the first time we've seen somebody go to the wrong house and get shot.
And really, Simon, it's just there's too many damn guns. If everybody had to, the people that do have guns need training. I don't know. We need to do this thing better. There's the Second Amendment, despite the protestations of the NRA and these ammo sexuals, is not absolute, and we need to get back to a place where that was consensus, as it was 50 years ago in this country, and the previous 200 before that. I want to move on with some of our briefs here, so we're gonna stick on crime, and we move to Indianapolis, where despite howls to the contrary by President Trump and Attorney General Todd Rokita and the Republican mob, new data reviewed by Axios shows violent crime is down significantly year over year. In that time, homicides are down 22%, robberies 15%, aggravated assault down 22%, non-fatal shootings are down 16%, and overall violent crime has decreased 20%. When you compare it with 2021, murders are down a whopping 55%. Again, all these folks with all these guns for their protection, fear of crime. Well, crime is down. In the next story, I want to stay in Indianapolis. On Wednesday, an overflow crowd saw the Indianapolis Local Education Alliance, a group we've talked about here before, created by legislators to coordinate the relationship between public and charter schools in the state capital. They introduced various proposals to modify the overall structure of public schools in Indiana's most populous municipality. And here I'm going to quote extensively from the story in Mirror Indy. So Mayor Joe Hogsett brought 4 different ideas to the alliance to discuss how the overall structure of public schools within IPS boundaries could change. The first would give IPS control over all schools in its boundaries. IPS's publicly elected school board would act as a charter school authorizer, giving the district say over the opening and closures of all Indianapolis schools. The mayor's office of education innovation, a current authorizer, would become a place charter schools could appeal to if they disagreed with IPS's decision making. This is the most democratic of the options, and as I give you the other 3, they will increasingly become more undemocratic. So under that first scenario, the district would also support facilities and transportation needs for all the schools. This model would likely bring the least transformative change to district schools and would keep tax dollars flowing through IPS. Now, the second idea would create an advisory board of IPS mayor and charter school appointees. This new appointed board would receive property tax dollars to distribute among schools for transportation and facilities needs. The board would also oversee charter schools. Existing roles like the IPS school board and the Office of Education Innovation would still exist, but they would take their policy cues from the newly created board. Okay, so one step removed from democratic accountability. A third model would dramatically reshape the way Indianapolis schools are managed. It would create a new Indianapolis Education Authority made up of the mayor, an education secretary appointed by the mayor, and a 9-member policy-making board, also entirely appointed by the mayor. In this scenario, IPS would still exist, and 4 of its school board members would have seats on the overarching policy-making board, but the IPS school board would cede significant power to the city in this model. Specifically, the policy-making board would receive tax dollars and make decisions about transportation and facilities management. And a fourth option would place the mayor at the top of the organizational chart. The mayor would appoint all members of the IPS school board, which would then oversee all schools, independent charter and IPS-run buildings included. The fully appointed school board would oversee transportation and facilities and charter school authorizing. Simon, this stinks. Am I the only one that thinks this stinks?
Well, I'm looking at it going, some of those proposals should be under a Secretary of Education, which is a position they eliminated a few years ago. And then you've got to look at what actually charter schools are. So they're private corporations that come in to essentially take over what was a public school. And usually that private corporation gets to buy the school property for $1.
$1. Yep.
Yeah, $1. So their accountability chain goes from very loosely to the local education authority to none whatsoever. If they can be put in a place that makes them accountable, that's a good idea. But should they even exist in the first place? You know,
yeah, that's a big question, right?
Yeah, and the Republican supermajority got rid of the Secretary of Education from Indiana specifically to allow charter schools to thrive and private schools to thrive at the expense of public schools. So I'm looking at these options and saying we can come up with better ideas than these.
I mean, the only option that is even remotely commensurate with democratic accountability is the first model.
Yeah, in one sense, but I would still want to put an accountability layer on top of that from the state level, because whatever you do in Indianapolis has to be as accountable as everywhere else in the state. Now you can put something together as a trial to figure out if it works or not, but everything there is being done inside the mayor's office. And if we look at this from another perspective, this would be like putting Pam Whitten under the Bloomington mayor. So do I think that's a good idea? I actually think that's a really good idea, because she needs to be held.
Well, somebody needs to rein her in, but that's not, I guess, neither here nor there.
Yeah. So, but I mean, from a statewide perspective, it needs to be held accountable at a statewide level, so that, the services you get in South Bend and Gary and Bloomington and Indianapolis and Fort Wayne and, LaPel, Indiana, and all the other small towns, they need to see the same accountability and the same equality in their educational systems. So, I mean, I'm all about making it work for whoever is essentially the last person that can make it to school. We've got to get them to school,
Yes. Tabitha, let me ask you, now this is Indianapolis. This is Mayor Joe Hogsett. This is the city council there. These are Democrats largely. I am bothered by a certain faction of the Democratic Party getting in bed with these charter schools. Am I the only one that feels that way?
Well, look, right now, even if Indianapolis has more Democrats, right, that doesn't mean that it will always be that way. And so I think then making a system dependent upon essentially the mayor deciding all these different positions and putting people in position, if things were to shift, then who's to say what the next mayor will feel? As far as just transporting kids to schools in general, the farther you get out with the outliers, the more rural the area is, the longer the kids have to be on the bus. So, the public school system in general is the only way that these kids will be educated at all. And the more and more charter schools that you see, which, like I said, I'm sure some of them are great, right? But just in theory, if our goal is to make sure that all of these kids have access to education and to a good, consistent education, we need to make sure that, like Simon was saying, it's the example from Indianapolis is across the board throughout Indiana. And it doesn't matter if you have a school with 20 kids or if you have a school with 2,000.
Let me say this to the camera for any Democrat in the state of Indiana who's thinking about running for any office. If you want the support of this program, you will support fully funded, fully public education, and we need to scrap back every damn dollar of voucher money that the state's been giving away. I know it's a big lift, but it must be done. I need to move on.
Can I also just say real quick, though, Scott, we have examples around the world where if we want to actually put our money in action, maybe put some of these politicians and some of these school board members on a plane to Finland, right? And go to a system that is working and be like, listen, you know what? We want to see how you're doing things. Like consistently year after year, you're number one for education in the entire world. And we want our education system to reflect something like that. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but you already have a system that in the world is working. If, rather than throwing all this money around and thinking that we know best, why not just go to the horse, if you will?
Yeah. I want to move on to our next story here. So, in addition to this report from Indianapolis and the schools there, that was not the only study or the only major review to drop this week. So Secretary of State Diego Morales on Thursday released a report conducted by the Voting System Technical Oversight Program at Ball State University. This analysis comes in response to the passage of House Enrolled Act 1633, which directed his office to look into whether changing the timing of local elections and shifting from a precinct-based voting system to vote centers would save money and or increase turnout. And though no formal policy recommendations were made, it found that municipal elections cost almost 3 times as much to minister per vote than even-year elections. Realigning municipal elections with larger cycles could modestly increase participation in the midterms and presidential elections, but would lead to significant increases in the number of Hoosiers participating in municipal contests. Also this weekend, Indianapolis is hosting the National Catholic Youth Conference. Pope Leo spoke to over 15,000 young people via video link on Friday, ruminating on topics ranging from the sacraments and mental health to artificial intelligence and the future of the church. The Chicago-born pontiff saying, quote, "Be careful not to use political categories to speak about faith. The church does not belong to any political party. Rather, she helps form your conscience so you can think and act with wisdom and love." The Pope does not have that thick of Chicago accent, for the record. Finally, in briefs this week, Indianapolis-based pharmaceutical maker Eli Lilly on Friday became the first healthcare company to reach a $1 trillion market capitalization. Lilly becomes only the second non-tech firm to join this exclusive club following multinational holding company Berkshire Hathaway. Their stock price has soared this year, driven by massive sales growth of the weight loss injection Zepbound and diabetes drug Mounjaro. Tabitha, care to comment on either of those last 3 stories before we move on?
I'll let Simon have this one.
Okay. Well, all right. So I got comments on all 3 of them. So the V-stop system. If anybody's ever followed what the V-stop system is about, it's essentially supposed to be securing the integrity of the voting machines themselves, and they're supposed to do the rigorous tests on them. Let me explain how incompetent Diego Morales is in managing that. The the program is, like it said, like you said, it's a Ball State University, and I can't remember the department, but the department had.
And as an IU grad, I will save my Ball State jokes.
Okay, so the department at Ball State overseeing the VSTOP program, and it's a contract from the state to manage this program. They decided not to renew their domain name, and Ball State University and the Secretary of State's website both pointed to this particular domain name for the VSTOP information. For the past 2 election cycles, that domain name, they forgot to renew the domain name. So for the past 2 election cycles, both Ball State and the Secretary of State's website have been pointing essentially to an Asian casino/porn website instead of the VSTOP program.
It's a real one-stop shop.
Yeah. So they've sort of fixed it now by moving some links around on their websites, but they actually had a decent website to explain the VSTOP program, and then suddenly you're going, okay, click on the link from the Indiana.gov or in.gov, and you're suddenly getting all sorts of alarms and warnings about malware and stuff, and that's exactly what you don't want from the people overseeing your election equipment. Anyway, next story. Pope Leo, fine upstanding. Yeah, Pope Bob. That's what we call him here, Pope Bob. A fine, upstanding young man from Chicago. So the fact that this happened in Indianapolis I think is massively significant. We talk, I mean, in church language, you talk about principalities and powers and the invisible. What you're seeing there in Indianapolis is a direct confrontation against Micah Beckwith and Braun and their whole Christian nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
That speech was talking. I mean, I looked at that and I thought that's directly talking to, the state government. So I think that's absolutely significant. Now, having said that, there's a lot of Republicans in the Catholic Church, and let's hope the kids can take home something that also gives their parents some sort of conscience in order to stand up and do things like we've seen in the last week with the no to redistricting. All right, and then the last one. All I'm going to say is I have personal experience with Monjaro and these drugs, and I'm saying quite simply that shit will kill you. I've tried Ozempic, I've tried Monjaro, and they've both put me in the ER.
Oh, damn! Wow.
Yeah. There are serious side effects to them. And
there are, yeah. A lot of people are loving them though, man. That stuff's flying off the shelves, and
it's essentially it's a fake Hollywood remedy, and people are also microdosing because the side effects are quite bad in some instances. Now, I'm not saying everybody's going to get a bad reaction. It's like you will lose weight if you can tolerate it and you can take it regularly. But it's not going to be a lot. You're not talking if you need to lose 100 pounds. That's not the way to do it. 10, 15 pounds maybe. And that's your or that was my cap before I ended up in the ER. So I should pass
That's crazy. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing, bouncing back to the Pope, that I think will resonate with people that watch sports, right? Amazing that we have a Pope from America that is talking about immigration and how we should treat people coming into our country that represents as ethnic and wears a baseball cap. So, I just kind of feel like the Pope is swinging and I'm here for it.
You know what? It's a good segue because Simon mentioned, the very pointed message that the pontiff was giving to American Christians, particularly these far right Christian nationalists. And Simon mentioned a certain Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith, and it is my unfortunate duty to inform you that we have to talk about this guy again this week. So the Lieutenant Governor's Hamilton County Church has been embroiled in this sex abuse scandal while his office is subject to a criminal investigation in Marion County over employment fraud and deepfake revenge porn. Last Sunday, Tom Lobianco over at 24 Site News, who has been all over this case, go subscribe to him. Beckwith and Chad McAtee, the state superintendent of the Assemblies of God denomination, delivered back-to-back sermons at the Life Church campus in Noblesville, where they told congregants to ignore the allegations. Recall, the head of the entire Life Church cluster and Beckwith's best friend and podcast partner, Nathan Peternell, is reported to have pressured teens to talk about their and his sex lives over the course of the last 30 years. These revelations began coming out several weeks ago after Peternell's 24-year-old son was arrested on 4 counts of owning and distributing child sexual abuse material. Furthermore, police found over 50 videos of the elder Peternell and his wife either naked or engaged in sex acts on the son's phone. Ew, gross. Despite these accusations, Beckwith and McAtee defended the pastor, calling him a man of integrity, comparing him to Jesus and accusing the church's enemies of spreading lies. For his part, though he hasn't been speaking or appearing publicly, Peternell is bragging that he can't be fired. In a recording obtained by Lobianco, Beckwith's bestie and boss boasts, quote, "I hire and fire pastors, so all employees work for me. The board doesn't do that, so the board can't fire someone, right?" End quote. Apparently, these proclamations of absolute power inside the church are routine, and though Peternell carries himself with an air of invincibility, he does acknowledge there is a way to remove him either by congregant revolt or intervention by Assemblies of God, the world's largest Pentecostal denomination. Now Beckwith says, "Listen, we're not those kind of Pentecostals, right? We're sane." He literally said this. We're not the kind that are handling snakes and whatnot. It sounds like Peternell might be on video handling snakes, if you know what I'm saying. So Simon, I don't know. Just the ick factor. I need to stop. Maybe go find a bucket to throw up in. I'll let you talk for a while.
I mean, it's sad that we have this situation where Christianity has been corrupted by the West to the point that it has. So, I mean, for those that don't know us, Michelle and I actually met as missionaries with an organization called Youth with a Mission. So we were up in Canada at their Academy of Performing Arts. So we both have backgrounds in evangelical churches. Obviously, I'm a lot more Church of England because that's my upbringing. And I've also been fortunate to have a Archbishop of Canterbury in our friends of our family, so that's wow. Been kind of insightful. I mean, Mum and Dad would go on holiday somewhere, and then we'd show up at Mum and Dad's friends, and then one day he got appointed Archbishop of Canterbury, so that was quite a surprise. I mean, and it's a long way.
Like the Anglican analog to the Pope? Am I getting that right, or is that like down a level?
No, it's exactly right. It was the position that Henry VIII created. I don't know if Henry VIII created, but it was created by Henry VIII's establishment of the Church of England in order not
Henry VIII also created the position of 6th ex-wife.
Yeah, and I don't think he's alone. He was alone in that. Anyway, so I think we've got some qualifications to speak into the Christian nationalist thing, and it's very hard to align yourself as a Christian with a lot of these fundamentalist churches, and Well, because this is a whole can of worms. But I would rather look at myself as a follower of Jesus than a Christian if what Beckwith and his friends are doing is what Christianity's become, because it's like Gandhi said, I like your Christ, I do not like your Christians,
Yeah.
and that sums it up right there as to what the problem is. So for those of you who are familiar with the Sermon on the Mount, that is now libtard.
Right.
Yeah. You have congregations openly in revolt, basically saying that the Sermon on the Mount is soft and weak, and that's not Christianity. So I mean, you've got fundamental points, and then you've got people like Beckwith, and many others that are actually coming out with these positions, which are positions that we've all expected the Antichrist to take.
Yeah.
And
Tabitha. Sorry.
Oh, and now you've got Peter Thiel going on tour talking about his visions of the Antichrist and how they're all libtard.
Yeah, Peter Thiel's visions of the Antichrist came from the Mirror. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's if he can actually see himself in a mirror.
Yeah, very good.
What I wanted to throw out here, as we're talking about Beckwith, these are things Beckwith has actually said. Yes, Jesus is actually into vengeance. Jesus divides, it's a warrior message, be ready to bring division. And to be fair, Jesus said he did come to divide, but that's taken out of context by putting in the warrior message. Jesus tells his disciples to go out and buy a weapon. Actually, I don't think they did. They said, go get your sword. One is enough. I think that was the actual context, So you can see how these things are being twisted. Pro-choice Hoosiers are demonic. Now, I know a lot of the pro-choice Hoosiers from church circles, and I would not call them that. I would call them caring and compassionate people. And then there's a couple of doozies. You can't pet a demon. You will either kill it or it kills you and those you love. Well, we should all try and pet Beckwith and see if it's actually a demon.
I don't want to touch him.
I think it is. And then no. And then check this one out. Discrimination against the LGBTQ plus community or against Jews or liberals is not only bad, it's not even discrimination. It's a direct application and enforcement of God's commands. Now, that is so badly out of theology. I don't even know where to start. I mean, because that speaks into the whole thing about you've got to execute gay people, which has been preached from some pulpits. And yeah, it's just bad, wrong theology. Anyway, you look at it. I'm sorry. I'll pass it back to you.
Tabitha, you're literally sitting outside of a church right now, are you not? I don't think that kind of stuff Beckwith is talking about is going on inside your church.
Well, I'll tell you this. I firmly believe there are more Hoosiers that feel like me and more women in the church that feel like me. And so the women in this church, I feel pretty strongly, hold a considerable amount of power. And if they caught wind of anything like that going on, God would have to save them personally. That's how I feel. The only reason that my kids are in this Sunday school right now is because I know the people. I feel that they're not going to teach them anything that is hateful. They will protect them. I give my cell phone number to the teachers that are down there. They know my family. So bouncing back to Beckwith and the state of Indiana, I don't know why our lieutenant governor is still giving sermons, because that sort of seems like a conflict of interest right there. You know, sort of pick a camp. That's just my opinion. And then I think that it sends the wrong message if he is preaching about such things. And let's just be honest, the content that came out is horrific. You know, like AI images of pregnant toddlers and things of that nature. So, how the church hierarchy generally works is the preacher and their children have access to the entire congregation.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that there are some congregations that the patriarchy is very strong in, and that maybe some of the women, especially some of the girls, would be being taught specifically, you know, be calm, be demure, like, don't raise problems. And if you do have a problem, either go to the other females in the church or go to the preachers themselves. So if these preachers are up in a pulpit and saying these types of things, people would be nervous because they would not want to be segregated or ostracized from the flock, if you will. But somebody has to protect these kids. And obviously the connection, like, irregardless of if this person has been officially convicted of these crimes, right? It's heinous. And people in Indiana, a lot of them go to church. I mean, in towns like mine, it's like pick a corner and there's a church everywhere. And I really don't think Hoosiers like this sort of thing. And I was actually in a conversation the other day about this sort of thing. And I said, look, when I go online, I'm saying the things, the conversations that people are having around their tables. Like, people are talking about these things. Micah Beckwith, he's not fooling anybody. And I think the Hoosiers are going to get him, honestly. Like, he might as well just decide where he's going to stand on these things, and just making it as easy for people as being like, oh, just disregard it. Nobody's disregarding anything. If anything, they're going to bring the hammer down on him and everybody that has anything to do with him. So everybody in that church, anybody that may be listening or is in earshot of this, stay as far away from it as humanly possible. And on top of that, if you're a man and if you believe in Christ, you know better. If you're a grown woman and you're a believer of Christ, you know better. And then going just to Christ in general, right? Jesus was a brown man from the Middle East that was flipping tables. So if you right now, as a person of faith, are not flipping tables and not very publicly, like, the outcry should just be overwhelming. Like, it should be making people's ears bleed at this point if you actually believe in the teachings of Christ, coming from someone that used to go to church like 3 times a week. It's one of these situations where it's like, hey, we don't always have to agree on everything, but child rape and sex scandals, I mean, that should be a no-brainer. Everybody should be agreeing on this. And the fact that we have a lieutenant governor right now that is somehow involved in this sort of thing, I don't know why he's still in office at all. Like, they should just
Yeah.
remove him pending an investigation. Like, he shouldn't have access to that church. And these people that are, you know, accused of these things certainly should not have access to any children or be in eye shot or earshot of children. That's my opinion.
The whole thing needs to get shut down, frankly.
Yeah.
That entire Life Church network seems like a cesspool, and I hope the backlash against it and its proprietors will be swift and severe. Now, speaking of backlash,
something else in about the structure there. So the reason that the head pastor there feels protected is because of the way they structured the church. The church probably, as a corporation, owns the land, and he's probably because he's the key man there for the church properties and stuff. He may have leverage within the power structure of that local community. That where the board isn't necessarily in a position to challenge that authority just because of the way it's legally structured. And I've seen this over and over again where the church gets into fights with the denomination when there's a problem and the denomination comes to shut them down, they sometimes find that, the denomination doesn't own the land, so they actually can't shut the church down. All they can do is kick them out of the denomination. And I've seen that happen several times.
And then they go independent, and you gotta deal with them.
Essentially, they were independent and then aligned with Assemblies of God, apparently. So,
and for the record, Assemblies of God, we saw like just recently. There's been a massive sex scandal in the wider church, not just here in Indiana. I do want to go ahead and move on. We're running long here, and talk about our top Indiana story this week. With as we continue to look at the ongoing redistricting saga. Now, excuse me, as we know, President Trump has been pressuring leaders in red states to engage in unprecedented mid-decade redistricting, redrawing congressional maps to favor Republicans, so he can maintain a majority in Congress despite his historic unpopularity. Excuse me. I'm going to pause myself here. Much better. Now, so this process began earlier this year when Texas gerrymandered their maps to favor GOP candidates in 5 additional districts. We'll have an update on that in the national news. GOP lawmakers in Missouri, North Carolina, and Ohio have followed suit, with California passing a statewide resolution to table their independent redistricting commission in favor of Democratic-leaning partisan maps in response. Now, Trump has been ratcheting up the pressure on Hoosier Republicans for months, both in person at the White House and by dispatching Vice President J.D. Vance to Indiana on 2 occasions in hopes of convincing Governor Braun to call a special session. In October, the governor did just that, requesting lawmakers convene in early November. However, that plan immediately went off the rails as GOP lawmakers knew they didn't have the votes behind the scenes. They kicked the start of the special session into the first week of December to buy time. Still, Hoosier Republicans didn't have the appetite, and by the end of last week, Senate President Pro Tem Rod Bray announced he will not convene a special session, appearing to make history by ignoring the governor's call. So, Tuesday was Organization Day at the State House, the ceremonial beginning of the 2026 legislative session. Simon was there, will be able to tell us all about it, and despite calls from an incredibly sparsely attended pro-redistricting rally, the punt was made official, with the state Senate voting to adjourn until January. All 10 Democratic senators joined half of the Republican caucus in passing on Braun's gambit. The final tally was 29-19. Mad Voters, meanwhile, was holding a civic literacy lab across the street, and anti-redistricting rallygoers greatly outnumbered their pro-cheating counterparts. Now, if you recall, last Sunday during this show, President Trump targeted Bray and Terre Haute area Senator Greg Good in a Truth Social post, excoriating the two as rhinos and calling for those opposed to his scheme to be primaried. Well, apparently, some MAGA partisans didn't think an intra-party challenge was sufficient motivator because they've resorted to criminal harassment to pressure the holdouts. Last Sunday night, Good was the victim of an attempted swatting. The Vigo County Sheriff said someone had contacted their office to report a crime at the senator's residence in an attempt to draw police to the home, guns blazing. This would be the first of many such incidents throughout the week. On Wednesday, State Senator Dan Durnell was also targeted by an attempted swatting attack, though police in his hometown of Highland in northwest Indiana recognized the prank for what it was. On Thursday, we learned of additional swatting attacks on 2 additional state senators, Rick Niemeyer of Lowell and Spencer Deary of West Lafayette, and by Friday, the number of Republican legislators threatened with violence by the right flank of their own party reached 8, with Huntington's Andy Zay reporting his business was on the receiving end of a bomb threat. Governor Mike Braun announced he, too, had been threatened by the MAGA mob for failing to procure 2 more ill-gotten congressional seats for Daddy Don. Now, Tabitha, what do you make of these swatting threats, of this intimidation, of this political violence by the MAGA far right against other Republicans?
Well, first of all, I'll say that Spencer Deary is my state senator from District 23, and I've met him once in person, and I read through a few of the bills that he either authored or co-authored. honestly thought he would just cave because I read one of the bills about trans rights or like the lack thereof in high school that he wrote. I was not a fan. And then he's not been very publicly out there saying anything about autism or disability, because the state is, they are putting a cap on ABA services and things like that. So that's affecting the state and his district in particular. So maybe this particular thing is just something that he's willing to take a stand on because he knows it's so unpopular. I hope that's the case. I hope that he's starting to get a little bit more of a backbone. That would be nice to see. And, all these guys most likely are up for reelection. So I think, it seems clear that there's a lame duck issue going on, and everybody knows that Trump is sort of on his way out, and they're all really heavily considering what their future looks like for reelection. So I think they might be kind of getting the memo, and whether they're actually listening to their constituents or not, I hope they are, because maybe this is just a foresight of the Republican Party actually starting to decide internally what their future may look like.
Yeah, and listen, I don't think this is them doing the right thing, as it were. I've said before, I think they see the writing on the wall and know that if they do this redistricting, they're going to shoot themselves in the foot and wind up costing themselves more seats than they could steal. Simon, what was the mood like on Tuesday at Org Day?
Okay, so I was at the Mad Voters Civics Lab in the morning. So I missed the pro redistricting rally, but we were over there.
you missed all 20 of them? Yeah.
Yeah, if that. I mean, you look at the pictures and it's kind of like, really? I mean, we had
dozens of us. Dozens.
We had more people we had about twice as many people in the literacy lab that Mad Voters put on, and then we all piled across the street into the State House. So we caught the House session, we caught the Senate session, and it was kind of insightful to see how they do stuff. One of the things that we are going to challenge is the fact of how quickly they ramrod stuff through. The clerks that are chosen to speak, it's their best auctioneer voice. They speak as fast as possible, and unless you've been briefed on what's coming up, you have no idea what they said. So from a public accountability standpoint, both the House and the Senate need a giant wake-up call from that perspective. But I mean, as far as the redistricting efforts and what's happened, God bless Indiana, because Indiana now has national attention for a red state standing up to Trump. And I want everybody here to be encouraged by the fact that, you're out there doing the thing and it's working. Collectively, all of us together, it's working. I mean, I need to give props out to Amy Courtney because she was part of the original effort when JD Vance showed up the first time. So basically,
this is Mad Voters Executive Director Amy Courtney.
Yeah. So
big fan of her work. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, Mad Voters and a couple of other orgs put on the anti-redistricting event when JD Vance first showed up, and Amy basically says, and JD Vance is here in the building, announced it to everybody, and the boos that you saw that went viral are from that moment, and that is giving so many people around the country hope, because they see if Indiana, can resist, they can. So I mean, that it's massively important from a morale point of view. It's like everybody here feels tired, they feel burnt out. the most burnt out person that I've come across so far was on Org Day, and that was Rod Bray. I went up, shook his hand, and said thank you for not going forward with the redistricting, and he looked psychologically and emotionally exhausted, and it's one of those moments where the guard comes down for a split second, and then you go, oh crap, the intense pressure that he's been under from the White House, from Braun, and from everybody else. He's a Republican, but he's done the right thing. And I'm encouraging as many people to call into his office and thank him for essentially standing up for Indiana and doing the right thing. And I think that's massively, a lot of people, it's like, well, I can't talk to a Republican, blah, blah, blah. They're like, forget that. One of them did the right thing. There may be things down the road that he's going to do that aren't the right thing. But in this moment, I think we all need to thank him for standing up, especially from the pressure that came from the White House.
Yeah, 100%. For all these guys, you gotta respect it. Whether or not they did the right thing for the right reasons, they did the right thing.
Yeah,
and they are being targeted. They're being threatened because of it, and that is wrong, and we should give them our support, whether agree with them, most times or not. I
think with Braun coming out saying, "Oh look, I'm being threatened too," it's like, yeah, sure, he might have one or two people. He's probably the most protected politician in Indiana right now, being the governor, and I would
go up in his helicopter to avoid things if he needs to.
Yeah. And I would think that the majority of the pressure that he's feeling and the attacks he's under are actually coming out of the White House. They're not necessarily coming out of Hoosiers.
Well, look, I think it's important to say that these people are sent and elected from their constituents to represent them, right? So they're supposed to represent everybody, Republican, Democratic, Libertarian, whatever. And maybe some of them are taking that seriously. We are at a very interesting point in American history. And it's like, now is not a time to be a coward. Have a backbone, stand up for your people, or get out.
Yeah, 100%. So, last thing in Indiana this week, before we move on to our national stories, about 300 Hoosier National Guard members are due to deploy to the nation's capital next month in support of the Trump administration's federal occupation of D.C. The troops, primarily from here in Bloomington and up in Gary, will drill at Camp Atterbury before leaving for Washington in early December, where they will receive additional training from the D.C. National Guard. However, a federal judge on Thursday ruled the entire D.C. mission to be illegal, concluding the president does not have authority to send in troops for crime deterrence. U.S. District Judge Gia Cobb, a Biden appointee, rejected the administration's broad assertion of executive authority, but stayed the order until December 11th, giving the Trump regime time to appeal. Tabitha, what do you think? Are our Hoosier troops going to wind up deploying to D.C. Or not?
Oh, I'm sure they'll send them, just because Braun's a bit of a coward, it seems like. He's, besides being anti-American, I think he's very anti-Hoosier. I'm just not impressed with him at all. And, here these guys are going to be women, they'll be taken away from their jobs, which is going to impact the economy. It's going to impact their family. They're going to be taken away from their families during the holidays, basically to go shovel snow in Washington, D.C. when nobody wants them there.
Yeah, right. Like we've seen that, not just Indianapolis, which we mentioned at the top of the show, their crime rate being down. The same goes in Washington. This is all just a big show of force. There's no actual need for these troops. And Simon, what do you think?
Well, I think they're going to be shoveling snow and other duties. The thing is, from so many places around the country, we're seeing more and more judgments from the lawsuits saying that these actions are illegal, and what Trump's doing with the deployments is illegal. The big problem is if the Supreme Court intervenes and overturns things, because that's happened on several of the occasions. I don't know. I mean, I guess we're all looking forward to the Nuremberg trial starting once Trump's out of office.
So yes. I like to, you know how Nuremberg was the seat of Nazi power. That's where they got their start.
I've
and
lost
you
your
know,
audio. Hang on a second.
They all came home to have those trials in the seat of Nazi power.
Yeah, I got to bounce, and I'll be back in a second, Scott. Sorry.
All right, Simon will be back. I will keep talking here, but yes. So after World War II, those trials were held in Nuremberg precisely because it was the seat of Nazi power. Well, after this Trump administration is over, I want to see the Mar-a-Lago trials, and maybe Mar-a-Lago can be repurposed as the National Anti-Fascism Museum. So we are here at the end of our Indiana segment, and I know, Tabitha, you've got to be taking off, I understand, so let me give you an opportunity to say goodbye to the good folks before you run.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for having me, everybody. Scott, I'm happy to help you anytime. I'm like 100% Hoosier, go Hoosiers, and, you know, I'm rooting for America. I'm rooting for all the people. I'm really happy to see what's going on in North Carolina right now. And I think it's a perfect testament to us rolling into our, 250th anniversary as a nation that we don't do that kind of shit here. And hopefully we keep it up.
All right, Tabitha, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here with us as always. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Well, hey, Tabitha's got to take off, but we are not going to just see me and Simon here for the rest of the show. We've got a new person joining us. Tagging in is Jennifer David. Jennifer,
hello.
Welcome back to the show.
Hi, Scott. Hi, Simon. Long time no see, Simon.
It's been what, days?
I think 5. Wait, was that Tuesday? Maybe 4 days. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're all blurring together these days. We have so much work to do.
All right. So, hey, welcome. And, you missed out on the Indiana section of our show this week, but we are going to go ahead and move over to talk about our national stories this week in a segment I like to call Who Cares? Because, these are U.S. and international stories, but we're going to look at them with a Hoosier lens. That should be our motivating question as we go through the rest of the show. Why do these stories matter to Hoosiers? Who cares? So, let us look at our top briefs, our quick headlines, and we begin our U.S. briefs aboard Air Force One, where President Trump drew outrage this week for responding to a question about the Epstein scandal from a Bloomberg reporter, Catherine Lucy, by retorting, quote, "Quiet, piggy." In economic news, the International Monetary Fund is seeing signs of a slowing U.S. economy, though a lack of data resulting from the recent government shutdown leaves the forecast less than certain. For example, the Labor Department announced Wednesday that it will not be releasing a full jobs report for October. Instead, we have to rely on other numbers to determine the health of the economy, and it is not good. An analysis from the Century Foundation, a liberal think tank, showed U.S. consumers are falling behind on utility bills, with past due balances up nearly 10%. Despite 40-plus years of free market deregulation that birthed these conditions, J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon whined about, quote, anti-business policies at the American Business Forum in Miami. The real problem in our economy right now is not regulation, but concentration, with nearly all U.S. GDP growth tied up in AI data center projects by just 7 companies. Despite warnings of the AI bubble's imminent popping, chipmaker NVIDIA, whose processing power is driving the AI boom, posted strong earnings on Wednesday, but that didn't help the stock market. Even with a positive Friday, major indexes closed the week in the red. investors may be starting to feel the pain that the rest of us already know intimately. Also this week, we talked about redistricting here, but Trump's gambit to steal extra congressional seats ahead of next year's midterms may have taken an even greater blow when a federal judge blocked the new maps passed by Texas Republicans on Tuesday. U.S. District Judge Jeffrey Brown, a Trump appointee, wrote that the maps likely constituted an illegal race-based gerrymander. Of course, that's of no concern to right-wing crank Supreme Court Justice Sam Alito, who on Friday blocked the lower court ruling, putting the appeal on hold while SCOTUS considers the case. Before we move on, talk some of our other headlines, I'm going to pause there and get your reaction on the story of your choice from that handful. And let's welcome in Jennifer with her thoughts.
Well, the Supreme Court case, I wonder if they're just going to let time run out to where they, if they don't make a decision in enough time, then the maps, I believe, will just stay, the ones that are already drawn for Texas.
They're going to have to do something, though,
Right.
because they can either block Texas and California, because California did this too, right?
Right.
Now,
Yep.
they went through voters, so that may be different. Whereas Texas, this was just the legislature, blatantly taking seats. Did Republicans wind up shooting themselves in the foot here? Is the Texas map going to get struck down and the California one allowed to stay? Are we looking at a massive blue wave potentially next year?
Potentially. I mean, if California goes through, my understanding is that if the Texas map gets blocked permanently, then California doesn't have to go through with their redistricting. I thought it was a threat, but
you're right. You're right. I believe it was contingent, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, is it contingent? Okay.
But at the ballot, they have the authority to do it, which is not what they got in Texas. In Texas, they jammed it through, and if you listen to the exhaustive testimony that was against it, one of the things that one of the legislators came out and said is 28 of the districts in Texas had been gerrymandered to be at least 80% white. Now, that is the component that the challenge has been on, in the fact that it's racial profiling, or I call it electoral ethnic cleansing, because you're literally taking anybody that's not white and you're putting them gerrymandering so that their voice doesn't count. That's what the challenge is in Texas. That's what it's all about. If the Supreme Court come out in favor of the Texas maps, then we clearly know that this Supreme Court is all about white supremacy, and that's what they're championing. I do want to comment on the AI bubble just briefly, because Indiana's right in the middle of that. I think we've got more data centers going in than most other states, or at least planned. And one of the things that everybody looks at when you bring a business into Indiana is like, what's it going to bring into Indiana? How many employees, how much revenue generation for the local community, and literally what's the velocity of money for that local community as a benefit of having that business there. Well, the data centers that are coming in are zero. And now we're looking at all the ramifications, and we're finding they're actually going to be negative, because you have the Fortune 500 companies. They're all using AI to figure out how to cut in their employee base, how to save money, because in capitalism, your labor is a liability, not an asset. So they're looking to cut as many jobs as possible. Now, the question we need to be asking once to anybody trying to put a data center in is, okay, we know there are no real jobs going to the local community. We know there's $4 to $8 billion of tax abatements just being given away, which is literally the taxpayer having to fund, that missing revenue. But in the long term, scheme of things, now we know how many companies are actively looking to cut their workforce by AI. When this, like Monrovia is the nearest one for us and is the local fight. When that data center comes in, when it comes online, how many millions of jobs will that data center cost, not just Indiana, but the United States? Because that's what that data center is going to do. It's going to be used by corporations to cut the labor force. And that is what we need to be looking, and that's the accountability we need to be, the questions we need to be asking.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's leave it to you to be bringing that up. This is one of your things that you're really good at.
Yeah.
The technology part. But you're right. Not only are there not adding jobs, but they're taking jobs away, just not from Indiana, but the whole state. We've got one down here in southern Indiana. And I think people, especially when there's less money and so many things have been cut and all that COVID money is pretty much gone, they are realizing that that our taxes are all going up. And you have these huge corporations and you have the data centers that are, like you said, they're actually taking away jobs, not only giving them negative.
And right, and at some point in this space or in another space, I hope to have this discussion where we can debate. AI taking all the jobs could be great if we could all just have extra leisure time and make love and make art and make music and not do tedious work. But I don't think that the ownership
is going to pay for it
go that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's a hard subject because we all use AI. If you use any technology, you use AI. It's got a long way to come, definitely, but
it does. So I need to move on and get back to our headlines here. So we were just talking about the courts. Also in the courts this week, it appears the politically motivated prosecution of former FBI Director James Comey may be dead in the water. Now, Comey is seeking to have the charges against him dismissed due to fundamental errors in the prosecution. His team alleges misconduct by interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, who allegedly did not obtain a valid grand jury indictment and instead filed falsified paperwork in this case. Staying in D.C., thousands of protesters gathered in Washington Saturday under the banner Remove the Regime to demand the impeachment and removal of Donald Trump, decrying the deployment of National Guard troops in the Capitol as an abuse of presidential power and vowing to lobby Congress directly for action. The event kicked off with rallies at Union Station and built to a main march at the Lincoln Memorial featuring live music and speakers, and was organized by the Removal Coalition along with dozens of allied activist groups. While the atmosphere blended protest and political mobilization, the organizers made clear this wasn't a celebration, but an explicit push for action to change the trajectory of U.S. democracy rather than just expressing dissent. Moving on to international news, the UN Security Council gave its approval to the Trump administration's 20-point plan for peace in Gaza. The vote was 13-0, with China and Russia abstaining. Speaking of Russia, the U.S. dropped a 28-point peace plan that basically locks in Russia's territorial gains, limits Ukraine's military, and pushes Kyiv to give up NATO membership, and then pressured Ukraine to accept it by Thanksgiving or risk losing U.S. support. Kyiv publicly said it's willing to talk but won't sign away its sovereignty, while Europeans spent the week freaking out and trying to sand down the plan so it doesn't look like a formal surrender. Russia, meanwhile, praised the direction of the proposal, obviously, and kept bombing Ukrainian cities to improve its leverage. All of this culminated in emergency talks in Geneva, where U.S., Ukrainian, and European officials are now scrambling to rewrite the deal into something that isn't just Moscow's wish list printed on State Department letterhead. In the middle of all this, Marco Rubio, now Trump's Secretary of State, aggressively defended the plan, framing concessions as pragmatic realism and insisting the U.S. has to force peace whether Ukraine likes it or not, which only intensified the bipartisan backlash. And our final headline this week, the UN COP30 summit in Brazil ended with a compromise deal that boosts climate finance, most notably tripling adaptation funding by 2035, and launches a wave of 117 concrete plans to accelerate solutions under the new action agenda, but it glaringly omitted any binding roadmap still to eliminate fossil fuels, drawing sharp criticism from vulnerable nations and activists. Major protests also emerged at the event, led by indigenous groups demanding climate justice and an end to deforestation, even as a fire at the venue briefly evacuated the talks and unsettled proceedings. So, in short, there on COP30, ambitious on finance, big programs proposed, but little progress on the fossil fuel ban that many believe is essential to stemming the climate crisis. Before we turn to our big stories this week, I'm going to give you a chance to weigh in on those last few headlines, and I'm going to start with Jennifer.
I pass. I'm letting I made that mistake last time. We're going to go with Simon first.
All right, I'm just going to comment. All right, which ones? Okay, so the remove the regime thing was actually quite inspiring watching that happen, because it didn't have the publicity that it should have had. But I mean, they showed up. They had a lot of pastors actually on their pulpit, bully pit, whatever you want to call it. And so there was a couple. I watched it a little bit, and there was a couple of inspirational speakers. It's worth checking out. The Comey thing is it's a joke. You put forward an indictment without the grand jury, and the reason they didn't go to the grand jury with that last indictment, they just made it up, is because the first indictment they tried was thrown out by the grand jury. They said this is all bullshit. Where else?
It would be it would be comical, right? We should be able to just laugh at this and call these people clowns, but I mean, this is like dead serious stuff.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the Russia thing. So basically, the plan that the US dropped on Ukraine Russia, it's essentially what Putin wrote, almost word for word, what their points are. From a strategic point of view, it's essential that Ukraine joins NATO, just from a balance of power. They were the nuclear arsenal for the Soviet Union, but if you go back even further historically, the Ukraine is the cultural identity of Russia. And it's from hundreds of years ago. That's where its cultural identity comes from. That's why
Putin, Rus, yes,
that's why Putin is desperate to claw it back. But it was when the Soviet Union broke up, they gave up their nukes for protection by Russia and the West, and Putin's obviously broken that treaty. And
you saw, Simon, right? You saw bipartisan pushback on this plan this week from your national security establishment types across the political spectrum. So that was good to see. Now I want to move on and talk about the folks in the national security establishment on both sides of the aisle. Now, particularly the Democrats this week. So on Monday, got this report in The Guardian warning, basically, that increased domestic military deployments, such as the National Guard troops for immigration enforcement, removing senior military officers and legal advisors, have made the armed forces appear to serve partisan agendas. So, to that effect, on Wednesday, we saw several 6 Democratic lawmakers issue a video urging U.S. military and intelligence personnel to refuse illegal orders, which is not just their it's not just their right to do so; it is their obligation to do so under the Uniform Code of Military Justice to disobey illegal orders. Well, President Trump did not take kindly to this, erupting and calling their message, quote, seditious behavior, and declaring it punishable by death. The lawmakers, Alyssa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, Krista Lucio, Chrissy Houlihan, Maggie Goodlander, and Jason Crow are all veterans of the armed services or intelligence community. Trump's posts included calling for their arrest and reposts of messages saying, quote, "Hang them, George Washington would." Democratic leaders condemned the remarks as a grave threat of political violence and demanded immediate Republican-led accountability, while the White House insisted Trump did not intend literal executions, even as it defended the underlying accusations that the lawmakers were undermining the chain of command. Simon, this, again, any other week, this is going to be the top story. The President of the United States is calling for the execution of 6 members of Congress. What the hell?
Okay, first of all, you should remember that Trump is playing kayfabe. So he's going to say all these stupid things, but he's not necessarily has the intent to follow through. But his disciples do. The MAGA crowd absolutely has the intent to hang on those words and do something about them. I mean, and the other thing he's done, he's openly admitted that he's given out illegal orders, and or he's allowing his commanders in the field to give out illegal orders. That's the admission there, which is probably more problematic to him down the road when the Nuremberg trials start, because the pushback is going to happen. The thing is, we all know that the reason that he ran for president the second time was to stay out of jail. And whether he got in legally or illegally, we don't know. But we know Elon helped him. And this is the problem. Trump plays this kayfabe game, and is quite happy to go out threats. And we're going to I'll talk about that in a little bit when we get to Mamdani, because it ties.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think this is.
Jennifer.
I don't think this is shocking. I don't think most of what's gone on this week is shocking. It's just what continues to go on. I think there's, it's going to get. He's just going to say even more outrageous things. Does he mean them? I think a lot of what he says is just talk. As long as he can keep people talking over here, they're not talking about the real stories. And like the Miss Piggy thing, that is not a new thing from him. I mean, that is just not news, and we're wasting our breath not talking about the real issues.
Yeah, well, it's ironic, right, that he's talking about seditious behavior and
well, yeah, I mean, it's
executable, the things that are punishable by death. When look, he and his January 6th planners actually engaged in sedition, engaged in insurrection, and
it's proof
in a country that had its shit
right
together, like say Brazil, where this week they arrested Bolsonaro because they thought he was going to flee. When he's due to go to prison for his attempted coup in that country. Meanwhile, our coup plotters are not only free, they're running things. It is bizarro upside down world if I've ever seen. So let's move on to the ongoing Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Now we've seen this come to a crescendo in recent weeks with the push to release the files, the hesitation from Republicans, which turned into capitulation as the shutdown ended and Mike Johnson swore in a new Arizona representative, Adelaida Grijalva. They had the votes to push this discharge petition forward, demanding release of the Epstein files. So, of course, last week we saw Trump flip and say, I've got nothing to hide, go ahead, release all the files. And, then this week, we saw Congress overwhelmingly pass, and Trump signed legislation compelling the Department of Justice to release its files on Epstein. Now, under the law, the DOJ has 30 days to produce documents, though, redactions are allowed. Meanwhile, the DOJ formally asked a grand jury to unseal long secret grand jury testimony connected to Epstein and his associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, which could shed new light on the network of enablers and powerful figures tied to the case. Also, scrutiny intensified on several high-profile individuals. 2 longtime aides to Epstein, his lawyer and accountant, are facing civil claims for years of enabling his operations. Survivors of Epstein's abuse are sounding the alarm about growing threats and fearing the event that even the forthcoming document dump might be gutted if too much gets redacted. In all, the scandal has shifted from dormant to operational. It's no longer about what Epstein did, but who helped him and who might yet be exposed. Along those lines, we saw this week that Larry Summers, former Obama advisor, former Clinton advisor, very, very prominent economist, announced he is taking leave from Harvard after his name appeared a lot in Epstein files that we saw recently. I also wanted to mention along these lines, if we recall when the government was reopened, that there was a clause in there allowing certain U.S. senators whose phone records had been subpoenaed in relation to the January 6th investigation. The House did repeal that provision this week, which I wanted to throw in, not entirely Epstein related, but it's something that the House was doing. So, and one of the Republican dissenters who led the charge to release the Epstein files, along with Thomas Massie, along with Nancy Mace, along with Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, announced in a wake of her very public breakup with the president that she will be leaving Congress in January. So, thoughts on this week in Epstein? Jennifer, what do you got?
Quite a lot happened in a week. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think that's too much of a surprise with her speaking out. She'd been heading that way for a while. I was surprised that she is resigning, just because, like I said, so much has just happened in such a short amount of time, but obviously it makes sense. I mean, I wonder where she's going to pop up, though. I think that's one of the big questions of where she's going to pop up. She seems like she could do just about anything, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see her with her own show or something. She definitely has put herself in the position of being somebody who can gather some support and weasel her way
Simon,
in there.
Speaking of kayfabe, right now, Marge Greene is not an honest broker, I don't think. What do you make of the MTG face turn?
Well, okay, so she was actively pushing for the release of the Epstein files. Mm-hmm. So let's address that first. And one of the things that she'd said was that she would stand up in front of Congress where she has immunity and list all the names that are in the Epstein files. She was just going to make a list and read them out so everybody knew what they were. She is immune from slander and defamation suits if she does it as an official act in Congress. Now, the fact she's leaving after the
after her pension kicks in.
Well, yeah, she leaves the day after, or the day after when her pension kicks in. Whether she's going to actually show up and read all those names once the documents are released, I hope she does, because that's the promise she made. Mm-hmm. But the timing obviously looks very self-serving. So she gets a pension and she bows.
I guess that will tell if she shows up to,
Here's the rumor on the street is it's just in time for her to file to run for governor of Georgia. So that's where we expect her to land, at least initially, campaigning in the governor's race. But her breakup from Trump, it's actually been kind of amusing, because all of a sudden, once she broke with Trump, she then started what the normal people were saying, and all the complaints were pretty much the same thing everybody on the left has been complaining about. So it's almost comical from that perspective that she's gone into that mode. But she sees the writing on the wall, and I don't know if they threatened her with being primaried. They definitely threatened Boebert with being primaried. And then lastly, the other thing about the files they're going to release, anything that is part of an active investigation. And remember, Trump has asked Pam Bondi to investigate all the Democrats in the.
Yeah.
So all that information will be withheld because it's under an active investigation. So we're not going to find out if Bill Clinton really is Bubba, or whether it was or if it was somebody else.
There's a lot of Bubbas
here's
out
what
there,
I think. Yeah. What's going to happen? And I think you nailed it, Simon. Is that we're never ever gonna see any of this. I mean, this is all a big play fight. Trump is not going to face accountability. We're not going to see his name in these files. If anything, right, like you said, they're going to block this. They're going to say an active investigation's going on. We can't release anything. If they do release anything, they're going to copy paste Trump's name, and it's just going to say in, like bold all caps, Barack Hussein Obama all throughout these Epstein files. That's my guess. What's going to happen here? All throughout the 90s, Barack Hussein Obama was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and they totally, had Mar-a-Lago parties together.
Well,
right?
I mean, it's possible, in theory, but I mean, in practice, his name has not come up previously. Bill Clinton's has, but then again, they've been able to show that Bill Clinton never went to the island. He went on fundraising trips around the US on the plane. So
I do not trust anything that comes out of this DOJ.
Well, we need another WikiLeaks. That's what we need. Is like they dump Hillary's emails and the Podesta files, and so we need something like that with the Epstein files. We just need somebody to leak it all.
It's ironic that you bring up like Hillary's emails because we found out last week that New York Times reporters Jeffrey Epstein was talking to, he was offering them dirt on Donald Trump, and they were nah, we don't want to print that. We're going to talk about Hillary's emails some more, like right in the weeks leading up to the election. Yeah. That was mind-boggling. Jennifer, did you have any final thoughts on this?
Is it mind-boggling, though? I mean, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if anything comes out. One day, hopefully in our lifetime, we'll learn more. It's the talk of the town these days, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's how many years? 70 years later now, almost the JFK assassination. We still don't know the truth about that. I don't. Maybe
that's exactly
by the time
you're dead,
we'll see something about the Epstein files.
Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Was that? Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, speaking of human traffickers, on Tuesday, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman got the full-blown royal treatment at the White House from Donald Trump. He was greeted with red carpet fanfare. He got military flyovers and a lavish dinner, signaling a sharp rehabilitation of U.S.-Saudi ties after years of strain following the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The agenda included major announcements. Saudi Arabia was designated a major non-NATO ally. Steps were taken toward a potential U.S. sale of F-35 jets, and promises of massive Saudi investment in the U.S. and expanded cooperation in AI, defense, and economic ties were front and center. Now, while the pomp was abundant, underlying policy details, especially around Israel normalization and Palestinian statehood, remained vague, and the deeper implications for human rights accountability were largely skirted. Now, thoughts, Simon, on Mohammed Bone Sawman getting the royal treatment in the White House?
Obviously, he's special. I don't know. I mean, he's a head of state, so I can understand extending a red carpet out, but there's different ways you can do things.
I mean, compare that to like the way Zelensky was greeted at the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you had JD Vance there originally as the foil in order to, stick the knife in, and from that situation, I just thought it was hysterical that Zelensky just held his tongue and just rolled with it. And then a week or so later, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've just taken out 25% of Russia's bomber fleet. Aren't you going to thank me?"
Right.
So that put him back essentially on the map and gave him back the cards that the cards that Trump said he didn't have. This whole MBS thing is. I don't quite know how to tackle it because you've got the Jamal Khashoggi killing, which was obviously state sanctioned by him, or at least his.
Oh, and Trump says, "How dare you ask?" Right, like a journalist in the Oval Office asked bin Salman directly to comment on the Khashoggi murder, and Trump intervened. He's like, "Hey, you know nothing about it. Great guy. Quit asking. You're embarrassing my guest."
Yeah, and it's because it's money. It's like
it's money, power, and status.
The morality, and the fact is that there's money coming from Saudi Arabia. First, it came into his immediate family.
Oh yeah, MBS is on the record saying that Jared Kushner is, quote, in his pocket.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
And largely, look, if you want to tie this back to the Russia stuff we talked about earlier, if you want to tie this back to the AI stuff we talked about earlier, you're seeing the merger of the tech oligarchs and the oil oligarchs, and there, there's your Saudis, there's your Russians, there's your big U.S. Fossil fuel firms are all aligned. The tech firms they want as much power as they can have right now so they can win at AI, and they do not care about the climate costs of going full bore.
The US's primary interest is propping up the US dollar and making sure that it's not undermined by a consortium like BRICS or someone like that. I mean, I look back at the whole 9/11 thing as being protectionism of the US dollar, primarily because when the US went into Iraq, it's like there was no actual proof of weapons of mass destruction. We found out it was all made up, but we went into Iraq because Iraq was selling oil in euros, and the euro was potentially the new US dollar as far as an international currency. So that was a big enough danger to basically say, no, Saddam, you can't do that. And the troops went in, protected all the oil fields, and they all of a sudden they were selling oil in euros again, and it prevented OPEC from changing the oil standard from the US dollar to the euro. So we're still in a similar situation. That protectionism isn't going to go away, and it's one of the, because as soon as it does, the US economy collapses. I mean, the Great Depression will be seen as a boon compared to what will happen if the US dollar is no longer a gold standard. So that's what it's about, and that's why you've got all these people with billions and trillions of play money all getting together, playing their version of Monopoly.
Yeah, and so listen, I want to compare and contrast this, because MBS was not the only brown-skinned Muslim man to pay Trump a visit in the Oval Office this week. On Friday, New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani was in Washington to visit Trump at the White House, and listen, totally ruined my script, because I had set up to talk about the way Trump treated these two men differently, despite what they mean, and MBS's sordid history compared with the young, dynamic, democratically elected mayor of America's largest city, but they had a surprisingly cordial encounter despite the recent public animosity. They presented a united front on major issues like housing, groceries, the cost of living, and public safety, moving above their ideological clash to focus on substance. Trump lauded Mamdani's electoral win and signaled readiness to back his agenda, while Mamdani emphasized his commitment to New Yorkers' economic concerns rather than only engaging in partisan fights. I have a working theory that Trump's brain is so cooked that he didn't know he was speaking to a different guy, and he was so nice to Mamdani because he still thought he was kissing MBS's ass. Jennifer, what do you think?
I just think Trump just tries to get on anything. He just has to jump in. If you listen to him, he started talking about Mamdani and his ideas, and he's like, oh, those are some of the same ideas that I have. So like he's already trying to set up claim for, anything Mamdani might do that might somehow Trump might claim as his idea. Oh, I was already thinking about that, or oh, that was already my idea. And I mean, I think any relationship with Trump is very short-lived. Unless
Ain't that the truth?
even even people that have supported him for a very long time. I mean, there is only loyalty to Trump. There is none from him to anyone else, except for Putin. Sorry, I got off a little bit there, but I had the opportunity. So
no,
yeah.
You're good. Simon, what do you make of the love fest?
Okay, Trump's all about ratings, right? Every person he criticizes, it's loser in the ratings. Well, guess what? He's got a guy that's got better ratings than him, and it's abundantly clear. And the thing is, the guy is from the hood. As far as Trump's concerned, he has tremendous power over Trump in New York, and there are consequences to Trump if he pisses this guy off. Now, you also have to recognize that Trump is at heart a socialist, but he's not a democratic socialist. He's a national socialist. He's into nationalism and all those things that come from national socialism, which explains his army of neo-Nazis, shall we say.
Right, yeah. No, Trump is calling Mamdani a communist, right? This is the criticism. They call anybody to their left a communist, but listen, Trump is the guy who's literally nationalizing industries. They took 10% of Intel.
Yeah, exactly. And
so what I worry about, along those lines, is I see this love fest between Mamdani and Trump, and I immediately my mind goes to like, oh God. All right, here goes the bulwark, right? They're going to come in and say, look, see, the far left and the far right, they've all been in this thing together. You get that the conflating of democratic socialism with Nazism, right?
Which is completely wrong.
And you get that talking point, right? They go, the Nazis were really of the left. See, socialist is right in the name. And I worry that the gooey center of American politics is going to somehow use this to tie the two men together, even though they couldn't be further apart.
It's possible. I mean, just like we need more centrist commentary. I mean,
well, listen, yeah. Along those lines, I guess. I want to move toward our final thing this week, and it's sort of a loose collection of stories that I think
can I throw
to something larger. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the whole thing with Trump is that we know he's a narcissist. Okay, but I think that's his narcissism is like one step above most people's narcissism, and it's like he's got it on steroids. And I've seen time after time when he's been in situations where he's been in a room with people that are actively demonstrating against him, or somebody like Mandami, who has called him a fascist, it doesn't actually matter to Trump as long as he's the center of attention. So when he went out to dinner for the restaurant and there were the protesters at the restaurant, he stood there for a good few seconds just basking in the attention, and then he's like, okay, throw them out, I'm bored now. So it's almost like as long as he's getting the attention, and he got that attention from Mamdani in a sense, because when the reporter asked the question about Mamdani called you a fascist, Trump's reaction to it was, he can say that. And then it was like, you don't need to explain it. Just say yes. That kept the attention all
I've been called worse. Yeah,
exactly. That kept the attention all on Trump rather than it becoming adversarial, which is what the press wanted.
It was really, really an interesting dynamic. So listen, we talked about the way that the capitalist class, the uniparty, as it were, would maybe like to conflate socialism with Trump's fascism, and we saw on Friday this silly resolution passed in the House condemning the quote horrors of socialism, and this was passed on a bipartisan basis. One of Indiana's Congressman, Frank Mervan, went along with this. Thankfully, Congressman Carson did not go along with this farce. Really just, and I'm interested to see what you guys make of that. But this is at the same time we talked about Marjorie Taylor Greene this week, and how she's leaving the MAGA coalition, as it were. Well, you've got Maryland Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin inviting her into the big tent, saying, we're...
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh, no, he said, we're the Progressive Party and the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. And that's kind of, I guess, the point I'm driving at in this segment is, what is it Democrats stand for if they can, if you invite somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene into the tent. Now, we also saw this week that a poll asking voters would they vote for a generic Democrat or a generic Republican in their district in the midterm in 2026, and the Democrats are favored in this poll by some 14 points. And I worry that a lot of folks on the Democratic side are going to be like, generic Democrat, you say, and not stand for anything because they think they can coast by being a generic Democrat. So even with the Trump's massive unpopularity and Democrats having this momentum going to the midterms and being favored by a wide margin, you still have the DNC like bleeding cash, and they're taking out a $15 million operating loan this week just to get by. So I guess with all of these things floating around, what are your guys' thoughts on the direction of the party? And I will ask you to begin, Jennifer.
Well, I definitely have felt it for a while, especially since jumping back in to run for state representative for District 66. The Republican Party is the same. They're going through all their changes. This is what happens when everything is chaotic. But the thing is, I think in the Democrat Party, we have different, we just take everyone, right? It seems like we take everyone, which is why it can make it very difficult for us to all be on the same page and get things done. And we very much have kind of separate ourselves somewhat, at least from what I'm seeing in circles that I run in with, people that are much more calling for change and are not going to waste their time trying to get Republicans to vote for us when we know that Republicans aren't going to vote for us, but that we need to be spending our time talking about the changes that we need to see, coming up with ideas with those, and getting out more voters to come out and vote for us. Then I feel like we have a more conservative side of the Republicans that kind of want to keep going with the status quo. They are bringing in candidates that have more of a name, maybe not even have lived here for a while, kind of have their own agenda, which isn't necessarily about changing things. I mean, as Democrats, I know we all want to see things better for people, but we have different ways of doing that. And I think lived experience is one of those things that is getting more and more attention, and that the Democrat Party, I feel like there's a lot of us that have more lived experience that really can speak more truth to power on changes that need to be made in the system, instead of just promising things, which the Republicans don't even do that. I mean, they're very upfront with cut. It's all gone. So there's my soapbox for the day.
Simon, the horrors of socialism. What do you make of the bipartisan support for this stupid bill? Listen, they mention it when they are listing all of the horrors of socialism, right? Oh, they talk about the Soviet Union. They talk about Cambodia. They talk about the Iron Curtain. They talk about North Korea. They talk about Cuba. These are not socialist countries. These are authoritarian communist countries. They don't talk about the wonders of democratic socialism. They don't mention anything about Denmark or Norway or Finland or the Netherlands or New Zealand or countries that actually do things in a slightly more socialist way than we do.
What's to say except to express the profound ignorance there is between communism, democratic socialism, national socialism, and say generic socialism. They are all different types of regime with different points of authority. Democratic socialism is the ballot box. That's the point of authority. That it's consent from the masses. It's not authoritarian from the top with a dictatorship like we have with Trump and National Socialism. It's the stupidity of especially elected people that should know better. I mean, there's always been this anti-communism thread that's run through the country, which is extended to anti-socialism, basically because people don't understand what the hell it is. It's like you drive on the roads, you pay taxes that go to pay for roads. That's a socialist business model. Schools, education in the school district, that's a socialist business model. You want to back the blue, you want to support your police, that's a fundamentally basic socialist business model. The fire department, that's a socialist business model. The community comes together, they pool their money through taxes in order to pay for shared services. So the idea that you're going to attack and condemn socialism is really an attack on yourself. And the stupidity of people. I remember when Joe Donnelly ran his anti-socialism ad when he was trying to get re-elected. And that killed his campaign stone dead. I mean, because it's like, oh, look at me, I'm a lightweight Republican, vote for me. Not realizing that if Republicans have a choice between a Republican light and the real thing, they're going to choose the real thing. So all this pandering by the Democrat Party to the 4% of the electorate that you'd consider to be like moderate conservatives or whatever, it just alienates everybody else. And I want to remind everybody that the 2024 election, what the overall statistics were, 38% of the electorate didn't show up. Okay. 37% didn't show up. 32% voted for Donald Trump. 31% voted for Kamala Harris. So when you actually stack what the electorate is made of, the Democrats came third in a two-party race. Now, I don't know how to express that stupidity any more than it is, because that's what happens when you run as a Republican light. You're just going to get your ass kicked. I mean,
Right.
if I had had a choice with Kamala Harris's campaign, she would have addressed Gaza. She would have come out with a Nobel Peace Prize. And that whole situation, you know, because she's got the cover because her husband is Jewish, that was just such a no-brainer to solve. But she didn't get the votes, you know, 37% didn't come out, partly due to the issue on the genocide in Gaza. And I mean, this is stupid decisions that the Democrat Party make because the money is coming from right-wing sources. And we've seen candidates that are currently in the mix that have that problem. So, and that's easy to address. That's an easy problem to fix. And it's not necessarily the money, it's just how the candidates are positioned and how they are in relation, you know. And I mean, if people can't figure out the candidate I'm talking about, it's like we have the race between Bo Bai and Blythe Potter for Secretary of State. Here's the thing. We do not need a zero-sum game in the Democratic Party where there is only one winner. That's stupid and should never happen. We need both of them on the ballot and we need both of them elected. You know, that's where the power of the party comes from, is all seats contested and every, you know, and we saw that in Virginia. You know, they ran a Democrat candidate in every seat. A lot of them got their ass kicked. Okay, fine. But that brought enough people out in the polls in order to affect the governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general races. And those
they want a massive
13
majority in the state house as well. Yeah,
13 seats. That's so. Yeah, I think I can speak on behalf of the Rural Summit and say that's the plan. Is to do something very similar to Virginia, Virginia tailored to Indiana, so that we can get the same results next year. The problem is the first people that we end up fighting aren't Republicans, because on a lot of issues there's a lot of agreement. They're people inside the party who are just putting blockades up because they don't understand an ideological point. You know, Indiana is the home of Eugene Debs. You know, Socialist Party. It's also the home of Abraham Lincoln. He spent time here. And if you actually go back to his first inaugural address, he said, labor is more important than capital. Capital doesn't exist without labor. Okay? He had a pen pal that wrote to him, and he wrote, that ended up publishing a book called Das Kapital, Karl Marx. Marx was a Lincolnist, okay? All this thing about Marxism, oh, it's horrible. No. He copied the success of Abraham Lincoln. They looked at that, the Civil War victory, as power for the labor movement and the common man. And that's really all people are fighting for. Is you know, their rights to have a successful life. And when you look at it from the perspective of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, not having healthcare, not having stable employment, not having stable housing, they are all things that are anti those three things: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
100%. You know,
and then in the resolution, continuing resolution 58, on the horrors of most of the things I identified in there are actually capitalism, results of capitalism.
Yeah. Simon, let's talk about the horrors of capitalism for a second, if you will. I mean, look, you've got the British colonial empire and all the various famines they caused and all the people they killed, and then you've got the Belgian Congo. You got the Atlantic slave trade. I mean, if you just want to look at coups against democratically elected socialist governments like Salvador Allende in Chile, you know,
those were the events that were quoted in the continuing resolution. And calling that, oh, it's a horror of socialism. No, it's a horror of capitalism.
And then if you look at all the healthcare deaths in this country that could be prevented if we had a single payer universal healthcare system like all of those horrible socialist countries over there. Jennifer, who's the most popular politician in the United States of America today?
Trump.
It's Bernie Sanders.
Is
It's
it?
Bernie
I don't
Sanders.
know.
By a lot. And the
You
man
think
is
more people know
openly a
Bernie
socialist.
Sanders than know Trump?
He has the highest ratings. Like Trump's
well, I mean,
underwater.
'cause
People
popular-
don't like him. Yes.
Popular to me doesn't necessarily mean liked. Most of the popular kids were not really well liked. Everybody just kind of was forced to like them. I guess that's the same thing here. So yeah.
But Sanders is one of the few political figures in this country who actually is above water. In terms of a plus minus rating.
Well,
The
and
man
I
is an
think part
open
of that-
socialist.
Well,
It is
I think-
obviously not a disqualifier, right?
No, well, I think part of Bernie Sanders' appeal too is that he sticks to his principles and is consistent, and he's out there on his own. When I think of him, I always think of the picture with him in the mittens that was at the inauguration. Just put him every little place, so he's like everywhere, and he's just there. But yeah, I mean, people know who he is for sure.
But Bernie beat Hillary in the 2016 primary in Indiana. People don't realize.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So
Yes.
people don't realize
That's
how
telling.
significant the message the voters gave us back in 2016 was. Out of a choice between what Hillary could bring or what Bernie Sanders could bring, they chose Bernie.
Could you imagine how we would what it would be like?
And yet, Hoosier Democrats seem to not have digested this lesson. We keep running further and further away from it. And listen, I could talk for an hour about that all by itself. And, hey, sometime soon we will. But for today, we have hit the 2-hour mark. I need to go ahead and let you folks be on your way, get on with our Sundays. But before we do, I want to give everybody a chance to say goodbye to the good folks and tell everybody where they can find you. Simon.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Just a reminder, Indiana, you are actually going to go more viral than you've already gone, and you're encouraging people around the country for what you're doing. So whatever you're doing, just keep it up, keep doing it. I can be found, my personal website is simonhiggs.com. I'm also co-founder of the Indiana Rural Summit, which is indianaruralsummit.org and organizingindiana.org. So check those guys out, and thank you.
All right, very good. Jennifer, where can the good folks find you?
Well, you can usually find me out in the community doing something, but if you want to find me online, you can find me usually on Facebook, Jennifer David for Hoosiers. My website is also jendavid4hoosiers.com. And
Two N's,
also, yes. Yeah. And I'm also a member of the Rural Summit. Thank you, Simon, and his wife, Michelle. Michelle, actually, while we're still here, as soon as I'm done, I want you, though, if you can make an announcement about Michelle. She just won an award. But anyways, I'm District 66. I'm running for state representative. That's parts of Clark, Floyd, and a little bit of Jefferson counties. Follow me and see all the fun stuff we do and all the trouble we get into. So I'm headed back to Simon.
Yes, the wonderful Michelle Higgs was awarded the Party Builder Award at this past Friday night's Monroe County Democratic Vitalia Faro dinner. I was there in attendance. She gave a lovely speech. Good to see her. Good to see Simon. And just a lovely night all around. Congratulations to Michelle.
Throw in there that she won it last year as well, the Party Builder Award, and it was actually in the name of the Indiana Rural Summit with Ryan Steele. So,
oh yeah, there's so many that thing just keeps growing. You could do a whole episode on how much work has happened in the last. Gosh, it's only been a year and a half.
Not even that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you guys are doing tremendous work out there, Simon. I appreciate everything you guys are doing, building, something that can actually speak to rural voters who Democrats have been
doing the work.
Doing
the work. It is doing the work, and it is leading other people, other Democrats like myself, to do the work. I wouldn't be running for the second time, I think, if it wasn't for the summit. And for a minute there, I said I wasn't going to. But it's just the support and seeing it grow. Like, this is the powerhouse here in Indiana, is this group of folks and a lot of the other groups that are similar to it. These are the ones that are doing the work. We don't have the money, absolutely, but we have the power.
Well, speaking of the money, yes, please, folks, do visit Indiana Rural Summit. They could use your financial contribution, or also, volunteers. Need all of it, all the help they can get, all the help we can get. Hey, I could use a hand too if you got some money left over after you do all that. Take care of them first, but then, if you're still feeling generous, you can support this project with a paid subscription over at HoosLeft.us. Also, again, there's that QR code up on the screen for you if you want to give a one-time contribution on Venmo. But for now, on behalf of my guests today, Simon Higgs and Jennifer David, I am Scott Aaron Rogers, and I will see you next time. Until
Thanks
next week.
for having me.
Love each other, Indiana.
Bye.
Bye.